Have you ever felt like you're not yourself? You have to change all the time for everyone else's sake to fit in, to belong. You had to create a character to survive. Well, today I got my buddy Erik the Viking Solbakken, an entrepreneur podcast host of the Viking Academy. He's an advisor and explorer, also the creator of the Viking Academy, which I highly recommend for you to check out. And I was on his Viking Academy podcast the one day, and we discuss ADHD in my journey, a lot of what you listeners have heard and on this podcast. And he reacted when I stated that I learned to play a character over 40 years and I got really damn good at it. And Erik has questions for me. And Erik, the floor is yours. Welcome back.
Thanks, André. I appreciate it, brother. Yeah, when we had that conversation, and you mentioned that we had you on the Viking Academy, which is an exploratory podcast that explore the
Mm-hmm.
mind, body, and spirit. And so I thought it would be really cool to have you on board talking about ADHD. And of course, we got all, entrepreneurialism in common, but I was really curious about the ADHD. But when you mentioned, you know, I, I've been playing a part, I played a role, and I was like, wow, I want to go down that one a little bit more. Um, what did you mean by that? You've been playing a role, and more importantly, are you still playing a role right now? Like, and what role is that?
Okay. So I'm trying not to play that role anymore, and it's going away further and further. So I usually refer to as a character. I was playing a character. So this character had to be more calm, less hyperactive in an environment, in a room, so it didn't draw attention or was embarrassing to people. The impulsive thinking or the impulsive, kind of dry, dirty, crass rumor, or humor, sorry, with an OUR. I had to hold that back and behave a certain way that was non ADHD. And at the time, I was undiagnosed. So all this stuff that people are saying it's improper behavior, it's wrong to think that way, it's wrong to do that way. Then you take that in and start going, okay, if I don't want to get in shit, I will not do this, this, and this. So after a while, that no longer became a cognitive decision to change and adapt to the environment. It was just became a habit and a character. So when I got diagnosed with ADHD, understanding was my brain that's doing this. It's the brain inhibits things differently than the societal norm. My time frame's completely different now versus not now, and being time blind. And the executive functioning difference is I plan and execute differently and erratically. So to be accepted, I followed the rules, and that became such a part of me. And being trained as an engineer. So with your accounting background, I apologize for using the A word there, Erik. Uh, um, you really had to fit in a traditional setting, a traditional way of doing, so that you wouldn't grab a negative attention. And that became so habitual that I lived it, and I didn't realize that was not me. And then understanding that the brain, this is how my brain works. This explains everything that is. I'm not saying it justifies everything I've done wrong to offend people or to put people not at ease. It was just like, hey, a lot of the goals I set, I realized were not my André goals. I've always known who I was my whole life. It's just I had to justify it or fight for it. And after a while, I would just hide it. So once I knew that this was the true me, so the question was, does this goal satisfy André, the real André, or just satisfy André, the character that had to be the professional traditional engineer, the good kid, the good citizen of the world, right? And it's just like, no, that goal is to impress others, and this is the goal for me. So your question to me was, am I still playing that character? I do catch myself reverting to that character from time to time, but I'm more cognizant of when I do and how I try to get back to be living my true life, my true authentic self.
Okay, got it. So, because I can unpack this, I'd like to unpack it a couple different ways,
Yeah.
actually. Um, what you're talking about is a conditioned behavioral pattern of trying to fit in. I don't necessarily see that as um, a trait just specific to ADHD.
It is not.
I
No,
think
no.
that's all of us, right? That's like every single human being
Yeah.
is trying to fit in. We're trying to just make sense of this world, right? Like that's what
Mhm.
everybody's trying to do. But and you and I've had lots of conversations about this. It's interesting to see that, I'm turning 55 and I'm just feeling like I'm now understanding who Erik is, right?
Yeah.
Like stepping into the persona of like Erik the Viking. I've always been a Viking at heart, but I've never really kind of embraced that and just
And live it.
and live it. Yeah, yeah. And it's so that feeling that you said you always knew who you were, but you had to hide it. Did you really know who you were?
I
Did
had a
we
really
like
good idea. Like I do things a certain way. This is the way I do things. Um, like a lot of the things say I can't do socially, it always worked for me socially. People were still drawn to me and I made friends, but I was doing it in a way that's not quote unquote socially norm. Um, and when I'm like, I wouldn't say I was 100% know who I was or how I did it. It was just, I had a good sense that when I was told this is the wrong way to be, I knew that was not me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think that comes down to an even I think we could go really deep on this one, man, because I've covered this off at kind of a surface level in the Viking Academy.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're talking about who are we, like who am I? Who is this I? This Erik is even a character. Like the name Erik is a character. The
Right.
I that
It's a
is
label.
a
Yep.
label, the I that's perceiving what's happening is a deeper me. So this, I find it, and this is where I feel a lot of energy around exploring. Like, and I keep
Mm-hmm.
talking about that. It's like, let's go explore, let's explore, let's explore. And that's one thing that I really admire about you is that you not only explore something, you go so deep into it, you understand it so fully, it is just there. If you're interested in something, holy shit, people stand back. Andre's going to take it to the fucking nth degree, right? Like, which is great, right? But if you don't like it, bleh, it's gone.
Yeah.
You see, that I would assume when you were younger, you can't, well, naturally, when you're younger, you can't just make those decisions because you don't have free,
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
you don't have that full free will to actually do what
But
you
I
want.
think you're
You and I became,
cognizant of something,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
But you have to fit into a certain degree because you're a child and you can't be part of that. But to unpack this stuff at the age that we're at now, right? In the 40s and 50s and going, I'm just finally starting to be comfortable in my own skin and actually
Mm-hmm.
break free from that, right? And actually express myself the way I want to, um, in a way that, and this is what I love about Strategic Coach, where you and I met, is like Dan is always about be more of yourself. That's what your company needs.
Yeah.
It needs more of your authentic, like who you are at your core is what your business needs. And it's what your customer needs. It's what your family needs. Like be more of yourself. But I find so many people don't have a bloody clue who they are. Like they don't even, for me, I always felt frustrated and held back. There was always
Mm-hmm.
something kind of holding me back when I was younger. And I'm curious, like with your ADHD, did you feel like there was things holding you back? Were you consciously aware of that? Was there a frustration that you had that
Well,
you
that
could?
was, yeah. That was one of the reasons I went and got some professional help was because like I've been questioning myself before my diagnosis and that life tempest phase time of my life. I always knew something was not right. Like I'm having all this success, but I'm not enjoying myself. And it was just like there's something missing. So, me and you, we're into Colby, we get that, the print. I really got into self-help books and understanding myself more for the longest time because I knew there was something I was missing. One little thing. I figured this out, this, okay. And then, but there's one thing always missing. And my therapist actually finally, she says, yeah, you're doing all that to find out what was wrong with you so you can correct it, so you can fit in more, which is another, the other term is masking. So in the autism world and ADHD, the term's also masking. So mask the symptoms so you can be accepted. And then once I got the diagnosis diagnosed for ADHD, that was that last puzzle piece. So I kind of said, here's a bridge made out of puzzles, and it's still flimsy, but it was just that one little puzzle piece that just locks that bridge solid forever. And it was that. So once I had that clarity, but something was always nagging at me that there's an explanation for all this. I never believed I was broken, even though I was told I was. But I don't know. I'm a fighter too. So, I'm a stubborn Frenchman that just, don't push me and I'll fight back. Right. But, I don't know if that really answered your question because I kind of forget it now.
No, it's all good. That's like I just kind of started thinking about the Frenchmen and the Vikings fighting against each other. That ferocity that comes out. I think it's a lot of frustration too. It's like,
Yeah.
when you really know who and what you are, you're not worried about fighting other people. You don't have that aggressive nature per se that you have to fight someone if they don't understand you because you're okay with yourself. And
Yeah.
I think that's the thing that I've even seen in the few years that you and I have known each other. I've seen you become way more comfortable in your own skin because you're
Mhm.
starting to see it like I say this in the Viking Academy and I've said it to you multiple times, like who you are yells so loudly I can't hear a word you're saying.
Without
Like who
saying
you
something.
are, you're just, yeah, I see who André is, and that's why I love the impulsive thinker because that's you.
Yeah.
That's what makes you light up. That's what makes everything go. So this whole feeling, and I'm curious for the listener too, to kind of go back in your past and say, when you were a kid, did you ever really feel like you fit in, or did it feel like you were always trying to just, or not fit in, but did you often feel like you were trying to fit in, but you didn't quite feel like you fit in, if that makes
I didn't
sense.
belong. No, no. I
It didn't
always tried.
belong.
I
Yeah.
worked hard,
Yeah.
hard, hard to fit in, change the way I am, the way I behave so I can fit in with whatever groups, but I never belonged.
Right. Yeah. Never belonged. And so I can honestly say that the first time, like I really feel like I belong with a group of very ambitious entrepreneurs trying to
Hmm.
make a difference. Like now I feel like I belong there. Like they're all just like me where, be very curious to see to go back
But
with
with
everybody
you,
to see how many of them actually have what we talked about before, addiction issues,
yeah,
ADHD,
or just being an
behavioral.
entrepreneur as
Yeah, just
well.
I think entrepreneurs just are not, they're not,
They're not normal.
not normal. They're not normal.
High
There's no fucking
achievers.
way we're
Yeah,
normal. There's
no.
no way. There's no way. We already know that, right? But so when all of a sudden you find your tribe, which I like to call it your tribe or your group, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, now I belong. And I don't have to fit in because I, who I am is what the group wants from me,
Right.
right? Yeah.
And here's the other thing too, I've realized with time, because it's the title of a book I've been dreaming about for a long time. It's titled From Hating Me to Being sort of Okay with Me. Right. Like for me, and I guarantee a lot of listeners, we hated ourselves because we weren't, we couldn't fit in. And no matter what we did was never enough. And then it's a lot of personal work to start saying, geez, actually, you're an okay kind dude. Like Andre, you're fucking awesome. I like you. Like when
Mhm.
I can remember, I still remember looking in the mirror a few years ago saying, dude, I actually like you. And that was the first time ever. And that was the first time I could lock eyes with myself. Right.
Yeah, and so there's my question right there. This spurs the question, I should say. The day that you looked in the mirror and saw yourself and said, I like you, I'm going to hazard a guess it's because you were finally acting like you instead of acting like the persona that you had been, the
Correct.
mask you had been wearing for so many years,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Like Shakespeare says, all the world's a stage and we are all merely players. Like there's seven acts and you're always wearing a different mask, right? We're all
Mhm.
just playing different parts, right? Playing these different parts. And I've said, I'm a father, I'm a brother, I'm a son, I'm a husband, I'm an entrepreneur, I am a heavy metal drummer and singer, right? Like I
Yeah.
have all these different masks per se, but when I realized that these are just different there's a difference between an expression of Erik versus a mask that Erik's
So
wearing.
it's a different persona of Erik versus a mask.
Yes,
To me, a
it's a
mask
different
is
Yeah, no, it's a different
Yeah.
expression of
Yeah.
who I am. Like, so you can express all these different parts of you, but you don't have to wear the mask and pretend to be somebody you're not. So the
Right.
day you looked in the mirror and said, like, I like this Andre guy. Maybe Erik's right. Maybe he is a good shit. Like, right. That's what I kept doing.
Yeah.
Like, good guy. I like you. You're fucking great. Right. And you're like, well, one day I'll know it. Right. But we're all like that to
Yeah.
some degree. Right. But it's when you're actually, and here's the energetic part for me. When we actually step into who we are and embrace it and express it creatively and fully, right?
Hmm.
Unabashedly, not worrying about what everybody else thinks, that is actually what the universe wants from us. That's what our businesses want
Yeah.
from us. That's what our family, that's what everybody wants from us. And the people that don't resonate with that don't want it from us, so they go away. But the people
Hmm.
that do will start flocking to us. And so you become this beacon of light on a mountain, right? Like people will start being attracted to you instead of you having to go out there and promote the false self, like
That is
someone who
so
you're not.
true. Yeah. Like what you're saying is and maybe a couple of years ago, I said, you're full of shit, woohoo, Erik. But when I made this decision with my engineering company lately to go a different direction so I can be more free, more creative with other things, and even in the engineering world, all of a sudden, all these people are showing up with what I'm offering, the new offers. They're just like, oh, it's about time. One client actually said, okay, I'm tired of you doing the other stuff you've been doing me for years. I want you to do that higher stuff. Right. It does, when you show up to the world a certain way, that you'll attract it. And I'm starting to see that, but you need to be free, right? Of the mask, have a handle of your personas, because you're right. Father, entrepreneur, boss, guitar player, Lego lover, like all
I
those
missed that.
different
I
things.
forgot the Lego lover part. I should have put that in too, man. I forgot about
I just got a new
that.
book about Lego. Anyways, it is. But in the end, you kind of alluded to this earlier. When you get from self-acceptance to self-forgiveness, I think that's when things change for you. And that's where I think when I was looking at myself, I ditched the masks. Like I know I falter. The thing is, I got that's so good at playing this character, it's easy to roll back in. If you get into a certain environment, certain things like I even recognize certain word triggers that actually says, "Oh, I got to behave a certain way, a different way. I got to become this different person." And it's just like, "Whoa, no, stop playing it." Like I'm starting to hear myself speaking like the old character, going, "Ugh, that tastes horrible in my mouth."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. The interesting part about this, and I've got a whole bunch of different thoughts here that we could go down, is when you finally start being yourself, you have what's known as self-acceptance, which is
Mhm.
self-love. I
Yeah.
still slightly gag on saying the phrase, love yourself, Andre, because I just don't like it doesn't, but it is what it is. You actually
Yeah.
love who you are. So it's like it's self-love, but it's like loving the person that you are and you've always been. It's like what we're doing. What I see it as is that it's layers of conditioning that we've just
Yeah.
piled on top of ourselves, on top of ourselves, on top of ourselves. And the work that I've done on myself is I've realized that the reason why myself was conditioned, and you call it putting on that persona, right? Or
Hmm.
putting on that
The
that
mask.
that mask and pretending to be someone you're not, is the mind and the emotions way of protecting it so that it can propagate the species. So if you
Correct.
look at
Yeah. Yeah.
the lizard brain is always going, look around, okay, stay in the herd. Because herd animals, when they stay together, they're safer than if you're running off individually. So the
Hmm.
individual gazelle running down is going to get taken out, right? They're going to take that one out. So you never want to stand out. But the interesting thing is, you look back and go, well, this is all a matter of unpacking all those layers of conditioning that happened from when I was a child till, you know, 54, like call it a year ago,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
It's,
it
it's
is.
unpacking that, but
Yeah.
it's an interesting thing to look at and realize it's the brain's way of protecting us, but it's not protecting us anymore because we don't need it
We don't
anymore.
need to be
So
protected. It's just a habit.
yeah,
The
it's a
brain's
habit.
good.
So,
Yeah.
but I think there's a bigger play here is that it's the same thing with eating sugars and sweets and all the rest of that stuff. The reason why we eat something sweet and we go, oh, we want it, and we go to eat more, it's our lizard brain reminding of when, you know, millennia ago, when all of a sudden you came across a fruit tree and you're like, oh my God, here's all this fruit.
Yeah. Yeah.
I better scarf it on as much as I can, build up as much fat and energy stores as I can because the winter's coming and I need to fatten up to
Yeah.
save
Yeah.
myself. That's the physical response to food, which we still have as a society, as a species. And it's the psychological attachments that we're doing the same thing. So the brain is doing what the brain is doing what it was designed for, but I think we have an outdated software. I think our software needs to be updated, like at a our
Yeah,
conscious.
agreed. And I was
Agreed. Yeah.
right. And I was chatting with, and I love what you're talking about that because, you know, back then my brain had to talk me, for me to fit in, it had to talk me down so I can have behaviors that was normative, right?
Yeah.
Don't be so, you know, you're making your parents look bad or your siblings or even your classmates look bad because you want to do more. You want to achieve more. Okay, you'll never do it. The brain goes, you suck, you can't do it, so you can stop. And at that time, you need to protect you because the pain of rejection is bad. And then the other thing too is I was brought up with Dr. Judy Host. She told me once your brain is wired to do a certain survival mechanism, it's always looking for proof to support that.
Mm-hmm.
So even if we're 40 years later, we still haven't worked on realizing, oh, wait a minute, that's from the past. We need to work with it in ourselves. And until the brain you tell the brain says, that's enough, I'm safe, it'll just keep looking for you to prove the point of being rejected or you being a loser.
Yeah, and rejection is, from the lizard brain's perspective, no longer being part of the herd,
Right.
and you are now off individually, which is where the hyenas are going to attack you and
Right.
kill you.
And my
Right?
point is, meaning it's not that it's you consciously making a decision that you suck and hate yourself. It's just the way the brain is wired.
Yes.
It's a subconscious thing.
Yeah. So therein lies my bigger ethos. The bigger question that I have is how to reprogram the brain, like we need a software upgrade. I think humanity, the entire human race needs we need an upgrade to the software. The hardware, I think, is all there because there's so much, and you would know this much better having gone so deep into understanding how the brain works and all the rest of that. But there is so much of the brain that we do not use. We do not even go near. So all the hardware, I think the hardware is there. It's all there, but the software, how it all works together, it's like that. We need an upgrade. Like we need a serious upgrade, right? But in the interim, is having the awareness of the fact that you're actually playing a role, that you're actually conditioned, right? That we're all conditioned, right? We're all conditioned. Everything we do is a conditioning. It's practice. Like you're playing the guitar, you're learning the lick, and eventually you don't have to think about it. It just happens. So that's a conditioning in a positive sense. Then there's other conditionings that I was told I was a bad boy. I did that wrong. And now I've got this negative pain conditioning from my mom from when I was a baby. And that's causing me problems even today in my 50s, which is pretty crazy to think about, right?
Yep. No, it's true. And you're not the only one. And like Dr. Doug Brackman, when he was on the podcast, he said one way to get to rewrite this program, and what Julia Ho said, is basically you just got to deal with the trauma. You got to deal with, in my case, little André. Why was he why is he exiled? And it comes to therapy or internal reflection and looking and coming to terms with maybe the past. Like everything you described is environment, the environment you're in at the time. I remember going from home, university. I was so free in university. It was fantastic. Then I went and got my first job and I lost all that. Because even right now, I'm like, that kid I was in high school, I was free. University, I was free. Where the hell did that asshole go? He was fun. But then that first job that environment was identical to my upbringing. I knew how to survive there. So I went in it unknowingly, subconsciously. It says, you know how to survive. And then boom. And then, 10 years later, I got out of it and created my own. So environment is a big key, and you got to change the environment to a certain extent, but it takes it's a lot of internal work, right? Even with the alcoholism, I realized after chatting with you and another doctor on the podcast, even that is you have to look hard and like you said, it's not a drinking problem, it's a thinking problem. A lot of this is a thinking problem that our subconscious creates for us to protect us, which is an odd way of looking at it, but it's true. It just, the brain's there to make you survive in the world. That's it.
Yeah. It's a survival. It's in survival mode. Like it's constantly scanning the horizon for the saber-toothed tiger.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Saber-toothed tigers have been around for a long time, but the brain doesn't know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're still looking for the saber-toothed tigers. The
Danger
interesting
is
thing,
danger. Danger
yeah,
is danger, no matter what.
my wife's best friend, uh, she's so funny. She's got the two daughters and she's trained them. She goes, as they were little babies, she would go, danger, danger. And the kids would stop and freeze because they'd know that there was something right. Like the kids would go running and they'd go in the parking lot and the mom would yell, danger, danger. And you could do it today. Like I kid you not, these kids they're like, oh, they're like 14 and 16 or whatever. I swear I come
Oh,
off
that'd
behind,
be, yeah.
danger, danger. They'll both freeze in their track, right? Like they're just,
Well, that's a prime example of
yeah.
environment exposure, and it's wired in there until they start realizing, hey, they got to get themselves untrained. But that takes a conscious acknowledgement and awareness, and then a conscious retraining.
Yeah, there's something one of my first coaches told me. He goes, once you know, you can't unknow.
Mm-hmm.
Once you know, you can't unknow. And I really like that because it was like most people don't realize how their conditioning is negatively impacting their lives. They're walking around,
Mm-hmm.
they're miserable, they're not happy, things are not going right. And it's like, I'm not happy. There's friction and there's adversity. We had the conversation yesterday on the Viking Academy mastermind,
Yeah.
right? We're talking about adversity and Denise Graham's, she piped up, the energy healer. She goes, well, adversity is just telling you that something's out of alignment. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
So once you realize that when you hit that friction, there's something that's just out of alignment, which needs your attention. Once you know that, you can't unknow it. So every time there's friction, every time you're like, why do I not feel
Yeah.
quite right here? There's that adversity, that friction, because something's out of alignment. And so what I love that you've said is that when you were younger, you felt that friction, things were not in alignment because you were not being André. And again, then you were trying to find out where the problem was. So you started searching and searching, but you thought that once you found it, you would have to fix it so that you could fit in. But the best part is, and when we talked about this before, is you said you take your ADHD, you actually work with it now. It's a superpower.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's
It's
a
a strength
superpower.
to
Yeah,
manage.
it's a
Yeah.
strength. It's a strength, right? And so that is the best part is that there's nothing wrong with us. It's that we haven't figured out we're the only species on the planet that doesn't know why we're here.
Yeah.
Like every other animal and plant and everything, insects, they know why they're here. Birds just do bird, right?
Yeah.
The trees are just being trees. But humans, we have no clue why we're here. That's the fun, though. That's the adventure. When you start realizing that is actually where the fun is figuring out who you are. And it's not a problem to be solved, but it's an adventure to be experienced. Like that's when you start accepting that
Yeah.
this is
That
the fun.
it's the fun thing about that, what you're saying, is the discovery of self. I think that's the journey. That's what's fun about it. It's the discovery. And then the discovery portion, it would be nice for us to be doing that with our kids at a young age. All kids should be discovering themselves at a young age with no judgment, with no negative influences, and then let them discover life earlier and their abilities early in life. And then, because that's, I'm having a lot of fun now because of this journey.
There you go. And I think thank you for this because there's where the penny dropped for me now. Is like when I'm talking to my daughter going forward now, I'm going to be like, so Isla, have you figured out you yet? Like
Mm-hmm.
talking to your kids and saying, this is the adventure. We all get born into this world. We don't know why we're here. Let's be honest. We've got a whole bunch of theories,
Yeah.
but nobody really knows. Okay. I mean, let's be honest, right? But the fun has been so far trying to figure out who I am, like who is this Erik guy? And the more that I find that and find out how it operates, and the more I say celebrate it, like the way you're
Yeah. Yeah.
celebrating,
Yeah.
that's when the light comes on, and that's when you're shining, right? And like, so like when you took that time off with strategic coach and you had to go do some decision making, and you made a decision to change the model on engineering company, and I was telling you about how I did the same thing. I got out of
Mhm.
accounting, but now I'm like a high powered consultant, and I just come in and do the touch points that I love. All of a sudden your energy level went ping.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you just discovered that part of Andre that needed to rise, right? That's
Yeah.
super fun. Like, it's super fun. For me, it's been an absolute joy to watch you do it. Like,
Well, I
just the
appreciate that.
time
Yeah.
that I've watched you do it, because I'm like, oh, there he is. Okay, there's the smile, right? You know,
Yeah.
yeah. And the
So
twinkle,
yeah, the twinkle. Oh,
the
oof.
twinkle in your eye, the twinkle in your eye.
So on that note,
Yeah.
dude, this was fantastic. I appreciate this. Before we go, where can people find you and the Viking Academy?
That's vikingacademy.com. And we've got YouTube channel. We've got a podcast. You can go subscribe
Yeah,
there.
I
Lots
highly
of,
recommend the podcast as a start.
yeah,
So,
awesome.
so Erik, thank you very much. And like we discussed, I think it's not only ADHD as well, but a lot of people who are different to the normal world. We all had to create a character to survive and belong, which is bullshit. And we have to shed that character. It's time to rediscover ourselves. And then, like you said, to shine, to get the twinkle in our eye. But that discovery is required. And that's where if you can just be free to be yourself and unique and find the right people, you're going to serve, it's going to be an amazing experience. And it doesn't matter at what stage of your life you figure it out, it's never too late. So
Hey,
to you,
I
the
want to,
listeners,
can I add one thing, dude? I have to
one
add one
more.
thing to that. It never ends.
No, that's great.
Okay. It's a constant discovery. There's a phrase that Krishnamurti, a great spiritual teacher, said: a mind that is constantly learning can never be hurt.
Right.
So if we're always in a state of exploration and discovery, that's where the adventure is. That's life, is constantly exploring and finding out new things. So it never ends until you turn the lights off.
Right. And I always say it's more about refinement. It's refining what you know, and there's always constant improvement. There's never a finish line for better for us. So, you, the listeners, are you able to separate your true self and the character you played in the past? Let me know at André at theimpulsivethinker.com. I'd love to hear from you about this topic. And Erik, thanks again, buddy. Appreciate this.
Thanks, brother. My
And to you, the listener, thanks again for learning with me. And we'll talk to you soon. Take care.